Alright, back to the grind. Thank you to everyone who entered the Punch-Out contest. We really appreciate it. For those who are just stumbling on this video, we asked our community to create Punch-Out boxers for us in 2 categories. New or returning boxers who hadn't been seen in the modern Punch-Out series, and guest characters from other video games. After spending far too long about what makes these great, and there were some really impressive designs out there, we've settled on one winner for each. So, for the inaugural category, for original boxers and returning faces, the one left in the ring is Bossa Joe Beam, submitted by Eduardo 94. What I absolutely love about this design is how deeply it goes into the culture of the boxer surrounding it. Jobim is described as a Brazilian ladies' man, loving bossa nova music and dressing like the malandros as he enters the ring. And he takes his name from the musical style he loves, as well as Antonio Carlos Jobim, composer of The Girl from Ipanema. Punch-Out celebrates the cultures that it visits in the most over-the-top way possible. And this interpretation definitely highlights the fun-loving side of the culture whilst creating an intelligently cocky opponent. And this spirit transfers over to his fighting style, focused on feints and bluffs to throw off your timing, all married with fancy footwork. It's so easy to picture him bobbing and dancing around the ring like a more playful, more aggressive Don Flamenco. Like most great Punch-Out boxers, Jobim develops the more you fight with him. After knocking him down, Jobim starts to take Mac a little more seriously, his pride wounded, adopting a hitman style. This style only guards one side whilst leaving the other unprotective, the glove normally used for guarding instead in a striking position. This fits in perfectly with Jobim's MO. He wants to bait Mac to hit his unguarded side so he can dodge, counter, and humiliate the little boxer. Thus, it becomes a prediction game, with Mac having to outthink the wily dancer in order to best him. But what's best about this design, beyond how deeply it understands Punch-Out's characterization in both culture and gameplay, is the heart behind this. Eduardo 94 based this submission on his boxing teacher, with a style similar to Jobim's. He wanted to instill that boxing is not a stationary sport. Your opponent isn't gonna wait for you. You gotta always react and keep moving. Mix up your punches, keep your opponent guessing. In the very stationary world of Punch-Out, Mac at most traveling along the X-axis in Super, this is something that's surprisingly rarely communicated, but Jobim's fighting style invites that constant motion, for Mac to throw things out and react to baits or else get overwhelmed by a flurry of fake-outs. And that's something truly special. But also, shoutouts to Crockett Launcher's Pizza Pasta. Like, there's a link in the description, you gotta read it. Just, like... Pasta here paid Mario several $100s to rig the match. You can punch him when his cigar puffs to get stars. He's gonna pull out something big, namely a f***ing Tommy gun. You can try to block the bullets. Catch him for tax evasion. The boxers must wear gloves. He's got a tie! We also have a category for guest boxers, I guess. And our winner is... Tyrogue by Tarvold's Quest. This was an incredibly hard decision. We debated for a good 50 minutes whether this one or the runner-up, King K. Rool by Golf Giggle Animations, should get the nod. K. Rool is such a slam dunk of a concept for a fighter. Donkey Kong being the previous guest fighter makes K. Rool a natural follow-up. The crocodile is already incredibly expressive, and the pattern-based nature of his country boss fights make a lot of his moves obvious inclusions. From the spinning cannonballs of the blunderbuss being hard to read and having to knock one back into his gun, to the crown encouraging ducking, K. Rool's got plenty of cheats. However, Golf Giggle goes one step further and mixes in a unique implementation of K. Rool's belly armor from Smash, essentially needing Mac to whittle away at an invincible gut that won't stun K. Rool at all until it finally cracks. However, after a knockdown, K. Rool would start throwing counters into the mix, meaning that Mac's rapid offense would need to stop and watch out for the King's nefarious counter. restoring the armor on a counter and almost assuredly taking the match to time if Mac keeps screwing up. It's such a strong idea, so easy to throw into Punch-Out. And yet we were absolutely enraptured by the idea of Tyrogue. If you're familiar with Pokemon, you can probably guess the gimmick. Tyrogue's a little fighting type that evolves into one of 3 other fighting type Pokemon depending on how it's raised. Tarvold's concept expedites that process into a single fight. Tyrogue is basically using the same tools Mac has, just 3 different kinds of attacks, but is constantly learning from his sparring partner. The point is that Tyrogue will always endure the onslaught to the second round, hanging on with a focus band if he'd normally be KO'd. Normally, I'm against the idea of this. If you're good enough, you should be able to speedrun most Punch-Out boxers and bait them into first round KOs. But for a guest, I'm okay with the occasional King Hippo puzzle. Round 2, Tyrogue will evolve into a different Pokemon depending on how Mac fought it. A defensive, read-based Mac will cause Tyrogue to favor offense, evolving into Hitmonlee, whilst an aggressive Mac will teach Tyrogue to put his guard up, evolving into Hitmonchan. Also, Hitmontop exists. Now, all 3 of these Pokemon have incredibly clever gimmicks and plans of attack to pull from based on that first round. Hitmonlee will constantly go for mix-ups and a non-stop offense, as you barely touched him during the first round, and he views himself as invincible, putting everything he's got into a high jump kick that's instant death for both himself and Mac when he's getting desperate. Hitmontop is based entirely on rotation. Mac was pretty inconsistent with him, so he's trying to find his groove in his revolutions. Punching counter to the way he spins causes him to totally collapse against a consistency that he never learned. But while those 2 are good, damn, is Hitmonchan done absolutely perfectly here. Chan mixes in elemental punches to combo directly into Mac. He saw just how often Mac swings as a Tyrogue, so he uses the Thunder Punch in order to slow the reactions of the Bronx Bruiser down. Fire Punch, Ice Punch, and Sky Uppercut are likewise tossed in to give Hitmonchan a really strong set of signature moves that pay homage to the Pokemon series. However, this is the bit I love most. Hitmonchan is a defensive Pokemon, so he's counting on Mac going in swinging. Therefore, he's intentionally setting up long windups to his punches, planning to take Mac out on the interrupt. If Mac doesn't engage, Hitmonchan will be confused, throwing out a much easier to dodge punch for Mac to counter, because he learned to expect the exact opposite during his time as a Tyrogue. The player has to completely change their rhythm in order to overcome the punching Pokemon, meaning that both Mac and Hitmonchan have received in-fight character development, which is the absolute last thing that I expected. The overall design is great, pays homage to the Pokemon series really nicely, and the only shame is that you might miss out on the brilliant Chan in order to battle the far more succinct and standard Lee and the awkward Tells of Top. But, oh man, I gotta give all the props in the world to Chan. Well done! And that does it! As a last little side note, our episode on Paper Mario Color Splash is coming along swimmingly. If you'd like to see our progress through the game, we have a side channel for our stream archives with a link down below. Thank you guys, and thank you to everyone who entered the contest. Now I can rest and never talk about Punch-Out again. Yep, never again.